Hello, everybody. We are back from another long hiatus, and we're gonna have this on YouTube first, obviously, because you are listening to it and watching it. But the folks that are going to be listening to this on the podcast audio only style, well, I mean, let's see, you're watching on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to it later because I'm gonna get it up. I'm gonna get it up with a lot of new episodes that um, I'm planning on having, and some other episodes that we didn't necessarily get to convert over into an audio format, because I do have some, waiting in the wings here. But I want to make sure that we get this one out as soon as possible because it is a very current topic that is happening in the Taiko community right now, and also because I think that from a timing perspective, there are some ways that we can continue to help this project. So we're going to talk about that too. But as you can see, if you're watching the video, my guest is none other than Jennifer Weir.
Hey,
Hello, welcome back to the
hello.
show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as you all probably have guessed by now, especially with the big poster in the background, we are talking about the release of the documentary, the concert footage of Finding Heartbeat.
Yay.
So before we go any further, I want to do this right now. Please
Yes.
tell us where you could actually, because you go stream this, you could buy it online, both the video and of the concert and the documentary. So can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about how people can go and find this amazing set of uh exposure for the Taiko
Yeah.
world, I
So
guess. Yeah.
the full length documentary feature film is available on Amazon Prime if you're in US, UK, Japan, Australia, and it will be up in Canada as well. I think it's also on Google Play and Tubi if
Hmm.
you check out those platforms. And then the concert footage of just the concert footage, that is only in one place, and that's on Vimeo on demand. And if you want either of those links, you can go to our website, findingheartbeat.com, to get the links if you're having trouble finding them in a search.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, and please,
Oh,
if you do rent or buy on Amazon Prime, please rate and review. I know it seems like a small thing, but that's how Amazon determines who gets placed where and what relevancy the different titles have. So it actually makes a huge difference if you rate or review us on any platform that you see us.
and then were you saying something along the lines of I think are we close to the 1 month mark, and that's really with a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
the yeah.
Yeah, what day is it today? It's we're
Today is the
on the 13th, and
13th.
so we're one day away from our like first month of release. So
Okay.
those first month of release numbers kind of apparently make a big deal.
Oh crap. So I mean, I really need to get this posted.
Yeah, get on there. Just run it in the background.
But I mean, it's
You
still
don't even have to watch it. Just run it in the background and then go rate it.
does it still count though? Like if it's after the month? I mean, or is it like
Yeah, no, it's
oh,
still
okay.
good. It's just more important in that first month. It's also still important after that, but
Okay.
extra in the next little bit here.
In the next maybe 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, the pressure's on now. Okay, I'll get
yeah.
this. I'll get this up. I'll get this up. Um, okay, awesome. Yeah, just want to make sure that we get that because I know sometimes people might only listen to the first few minutes of a show and then they get sidetracked and gonna do something else. So we want to make sure that we get that in the beginning so
Thank
everyone
you.
knows about where to find Finding Heartbeat, and so that way you could also rate it, leave a comment, and that helps the algorithm and kind of how the show
Yes.
places on the Amazon market. So it's funny because I know the title's Finding Heartbeat, but I think I'm assuming that generally, kind of in colloquial speech, everyone just calls it Heartbeat.
Well, we're
Or
trying to
is that
distinguish
not?
between the concert and the film. So that's
Oh,
sort of the whole thing. Like the Her Beat concert was this one phenomenon, and then Finding Her Beat is sort of the just the film.
oh, okay,
And so
okay.
for people outside of the Taiko community, they're thinking Finding Her Beat about the film, and they're not really thinking about the name of the concert. It doesn't have any real relevance to them.
Mm. Okay, where I feel like a lot of us in the tech community all kind of just lump it together as
Yes,
one
exactly. Yep,
project. So
yep, yep,
okay.
yep.
Okay, all right. Well, I will try to differentiate the two then, relative as much as I can relative to the conversation. So bear with me. Um, okay, cool. So, I was going back when I was kind of doing a little bit of research um for this conversation today, and I went back and listened to our original podcast when we were kind of previewing
Mm,
both the concert and the documentary, just so I can kind
mhm.
of catch up and see if there's anything I kind of wanted to pull from one or the other, or maybe not ask the same question from one or the other. And then I realized that in throughout the conversation and in the just by kind of looking at like, okay, when did this happen? We recorded that in January 2020.
Yeah.
So lot of life lived since,
Oh my
since
God.
January
Several
2020.
lifetimes at least. Yeah,
And
for sure.
I always want to say, like, in some cases, and you'll see as I kind of go through the conversation, it's like, okay, this is going to be a podcast, or maybe it's going to be like Tyrone therapy session.
Yeah. Same
Because
for me. Same for me.
yeah, because I tell you, it's like, man, between COVID and then now I have like these two kids. It's like so
Whole
many,
different world.
yeah, different life changes all at the same time too. So sometimes I can't tell, kind of like, well, am I feeling this way or because of
Hmm.
COVID still, and just kind of, I'm, in some cases still feel like I'm kind of reeling from that, or is it because we had the one kid or the two kid or the one kid during COVID and one kid not, and you know, I feel like now I'm just starting to kind of go back and kind of make some connections with people that I've kind of neglected, and I kind of went into like, I don't know, was it the COVID black hole or was it new parent black hole? Right?
Yeah, and they probably, well, I imagine that they both, kind of locked in and sort of exponentially kind of impacted everything too.
Yeah. So I'm just now feel like I'm kind of getting out of that crawl my way out of the black hole, then I slip in and then I try to crawl out a little bit. So
Makes total sense.
yeah. Um oh, and that's the other thing I should say. Spoilers alert. We're gonna be spoilers all over the
Oh,
place. Yeah. Unless I guess no, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to spoiler alert this because yeah, I have lots of things I want to talk about within
okay.
the
Okay.
documentary. So yeah, so everyone, if you haven't seen it, maybe pause this, go rent Finding Herbie the documentary on Amazon.com and or the other platforms, and then come back and then you can watch this, and then it'll give you a lot more context to kind of what we're talking about. So you have been alerted. Okay. Um, but anyways, yeah, gosh, I tell you what, as I was watching the documentary, I was like, oh yeah, it's like, I kind of remember hearing about, when Jennifer told me about this is going to happen next, or these are things happening. And then they did there was the one part where they did the voiceover of kind of like the, NBC News or ABC News or something like that about like, you know, you know, they don't know if it's spreading and blah blah blah. And like I immediately like had all this like PTSD, like trauma, just like like hit me. It was such like a visceral response. It was
Yeah.
it was kind of crazy. So
Yeah, that's not uncommon. It's that thing that sort of shared reference that everybody has now of like, where were you and what did that interrupt in your life and how things were never the same after. I think we can all relate to that. It's really fascinating.
mhm. Another funny thing is, as I was listening to the previous podcast too, um there was there was like I do like an ad in between, and there was an ad
Mm-hmm.
from Mark H, and he's talking about, yes, come to Connect 2020, it's going to be the summer, it's going to be great. And I'm like, oh, and I got sad. I was like,
Womp
oh,
womp.
oh, but it's like, just things like that. And actually there's some of the things I'm interested in kind of finding out because, you know with so the concert was February 29th, and that's another crazy thing that it is 4 years later, because this we had leap year
Yeah,
this year, right? And
right.
that was February 29th, so another leap year. And it's like, oh my god, it's like, you mean to tell me that was 4 years ago now that
Mhm.
that happened? It seemed like it's this weird thing with this time frame, these last 4 years, right? It's like it seems like things just happened somewhat recently, but when you think about it, it's like, man, that was a long time ago. Someone
Yeah.
already went to high school and graduated,
Yeah.
right? Or
Oh
they're
my
about they're freshmen, they're about to graduate now. So it's crazy how much time has passed.
God. Mhm.
Um, what has it been like for you, I guess, from that aspect of like, especially, just for that time? Because I know that in the other podcast too, we said, hey, so kind of what's the plan? You're like, oh, we're gonna take it, we're filming and do the concert in February, and then we're gonna kind of take it on the what do you want to call it,
Take it on the road.
yeah, and the independent circuit, independent film circuit, and then we should have a release by next spring in 2021. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. It's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
that didn't happen.
No, that didn't happen at all. Um, so yeah, so it's very interesting. So after her beat the concert on the 29th, and so Daiko, our group here locally, we never met again. Like we had
Oh,
planned to have
wow.
like this celebration meeting wrap up of the whole project and go out for dinner. And because by then COVID hit and the restrictions hit,
Yeah.
and so we never met again for like a year later or more.
Mm.
So we never, as a group, really had closure. Everyone just like slammed into the pandemic, and then we, saw each other a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that happened. We weren't able to tour or extend sort of the Herbie concert to other cities, which was going to be a possibility. So that
Oh,
didn't happen.
wow. I didn't realize that.
Um,
Okay.
it
Wow.
was, it was a possibility. It wasn't like in stone, but it would likely would have happened in some way or another. And
Uh-huh.
um, then it was hard to even get artists out of the country because many of them had like the next place they're going to and workshops and things, and everybody just had to like cancel and head home.
Oh, yeah.
Or they would like fly, for example, someone flew to Europe and then just had to like the next day fly home. Like it's
Oh, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
had to cancel.
Yeah.
So that happened. Then, of course, um, not too long after that was the murder of George Floyd, which
Mm.
is, like maybe less than a mile from my house.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, so the uprisings and all of the sort of social churn and trauma around that was happening, as
Hmm.
well as the pandemic. And then you're also trying to like, then you have to learn how to in the fall like homeschool your kid, which is
Oh.
there's a comedian who was like did this bit where she was saying like I didn't have children just so I'd have to teach them. Um, but yeah, that was challenging for everybody to figure out how to make that work, and
Hmm.
then to like go from being in the office to being home.
Hmm.
Um, and then we had such a tiny house that we then moved to a larger house, thank goodness,
Oh,
early in the
wow.
pandemic, which made the home officing thing a lot easier, but it was also challenging. So we just had all these big life shifts
Oh my
happening, like I
goodness.
think like many people at that time,
Yeah.
um, going through a lot. Um, yeah, and I would say like honestly, I think I would have hit a slump no matter what, that big slump you have after you pull off a big
Yeah.
concert, a big project.
Yeah.
So I hit this slump, and then all of this other stuff happened, and I think I was probably depressed for a good year and a half,
Oh,
like
wow.
really struggled,
Uh-huh.
which was new for me, and I learned a lot in that, and I'm actually grateful for it now, even though it wasn't pleasant. But I've learned a lot about myself and all of those things that you do when you have to kind of dig a little deeper.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, it was a great time of growth and churn and all of those and reckoning and all of those things on kind of every level, from like personal, professional, social, creative wise, just like
Mm.
everywhere. It was a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of people have gone through their reckonings as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because when I was listening to the podcast, I don't remember hearing about necessarily a tour, but I think there was a bunch of like workshops I think that people were gonna be potentially doing. But I'm guessing that
Yeah, we did
did those
manage to
happen?
sneak the workshops in
Oh,
as
okay.
the whole Herbie concert, and there was a women in taiko gathering kind of panel discussion too that was
Oh,
really
good.
cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff happened. It was so interesting to have such an amazing transformational experience in that concert, and then just have everything shut down. Like there was
Yeah.
nowhere to go with it. We couldn't like take it to that next level.
Mm.
But the film hopefully did that, and that's what was able to continue during a pandemic because they were editing, going through 200 hours of film to try and pull out the 89 minutes that became Finding Her Beat.
Mm.
So that was a longer process too. You know, it wasn't like, oh, 3 months and we're out, we're ready. It was, oh, a year and a half or more,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Did you participate in any of that part of the process with the filmmakers or?
Yeah, I would say what I did mostly is just give feedback. So they would do work and get it to a certain draft
Mm.
level, and I would give feedback, and then there'd be a big chunk of work, and so I would check in periodically. Um, but the bulk of the 99.9% of the work was on the editors and the directors.
Okay, I see. I see. And then so after that was done and as things started to open up, we started to kind of see the film festivals start to kind of come back. I mean, how many different film festivals did this
I think
documentary
we
screen
clocked
at?
in at like um over 50, just a little bit over 50.
So, I mean, that seems a lot to me. Is that a lot or
A
is that
lot.
pretty okay? Okay. I didn't
No,
know
it's a
if that
lot.
is okay. Okay.
It's insane.
Oh, okay.
Insane in a good way. Um, here's what happened is normally you kind of get you slide into sort of a kind of a path in the film festivals. And what was cool about this film is that we were in the mainstream festivals, we were in the documentary film festivals, we were in the
Uh
women-led focus festivals, we were in the AAPI festivals, we were
uh
in the music festivals, and we were in the queer festivals.
oh
So we
wow.
had
Okay.
this
Yeah.
broad appeal that kind of like clicked across all these channels where usually you're kind of in one lane, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was really cool. And yeah, it was neat to see a real broad embracing of it. And again, if it I've been told by several people that if it weren't for the fact that the whole industry has been upended on the
Mm.
film side of things, as well as many industries, but we would have had a deal, like a decent distribution deal, where someone would have said, "Here's some money, here you go." Um,
Oh.
but the timing wasn't right for that, and so we're still kind of in that independent, make it up as you go along. If there's not a path, carve it out yourself, sort of way of doing things, which we
Mm.
have been from the beginning.
Hmm. Oh, interesting. And I see, especially as I can see in the poster right behind you too, it's like it looks like you guys won some awards.
Yeah, yeah, we won it. There's the Independent Spirit Awards, like there's the Oscars and all those, and then there's the Independent Spirit Awards, and then even down below that, there's the Award This by Film Threat, and that's for the lower budget films and the under the radar films, like the truly independent films.
Hmm.
So we won the Best Music Documentary there.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, we won a jury prize for a film festival that was in Japan. We won
Oh.
a jury prize for one that was in the UK. We've won some local Minnesota Best Documentary Film Festival, so a little bit of here and there, like everything from audience favorite to best directors to best documentary and to a jury prize at different festivals here and there.
Hmm.
So that's been fun too. Like it's always fun. Um, but the thing is that as I've learned as a first time and film producer is that the success and the response is phenomenal. It feels so great. It's so rewarding, and um it's just so wonderful to see your work out there and
Hmm.
impacting people, but it doesn't translate into money.
Uh,
So like the success, which has been phenomenal. Like I couldn't have imagined it to have even more success than it has, but it doesn't actually translate into money, which is unfortunate, but I'm a nonprofit, so I guess we're kind of used to that.
Mm.
um, but yeah, so I do hope it has another life kind of in streaming, and throughout many years, and in the educational kind of sphere as well. We've been going to different colleges and screening and giving workshops and panels and things like that.
Oh, okay,
um,
cool. Okay.
yeah, it's been a fun ride, I can say that for sure.
So of those 50 different festivals that did you get to go to all of them or majority of them or
I'd say I went to a lot of them, maybe one fourth of them, one fourth
okay.
to one third, somewhere in there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So some festivals have funds that where they can fly you out,
oh,
and
okay.
then a lot of them don't, and it's on your dime. And so
Hmm.
you kind of pick and choose which ones, based on your schedule and all the things.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I missed the screening that they had, and I think that we might have actually had two screenings in the greater Seattle area. I think.
Yeah, I think we were there several times actually. Like
Yeah,
again, for a queer festival, for an Asian festival, for another festival.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like it was kind of coming out during a time when I think either this is probably the older one was born not too long after that, and we were I mean it was still coming out of COVID, and we were just kind of being real careful, especially because I
Yeah.
think knew that we were going to be having the other one too, and so then it was like, well, we
Mhm.
didn't want to, we were very more on the cautious side, I guess, of going out and kind of doing less things where people were going to be, I guess, in more closer proximity. So another thing I missed about the whole her beat her beat and finding her beat phenomena, because I I regret that I didn't go to the concert. And
Oh.
I at the time I'm trying to think of like, well, it's like, well, what was I doing at the time? I was like, why? What was my excuse, and why was I not going? And it's like, okay, early 2020. I think that we were kind of going through the process of trying to have a kid at that point in time too.
Mm.
So there was kind of a
Mhm.
lot going on from that standpoint, and then I was going to be I was in between two business trips during that time too, so I was kind of away from home and whatnot. So I think that's kind of why I was like, well, I probably should stay home. But especially too, I guess, relative to if I if I know that everything was going to shut down and everything else, it's like that even more would have been like, if I had that crystal ball, it's like, oh, I definitely should have gone. But you know I got to relive it, or relive it through watching the concert, watching the video. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad that I still felt like I got to be kind of a part of it
Oh,
in a
good.
small way. But it's like, man, yeah, I wish I could have gone. Yeah, because I know a lot of people that ended up flying in for the show, and then everyone went to the big after party afterwards. And so
Yes.
I was we were sleeping and my phone rang, and it was like, I think it was like, 1 in the morning or something like that. And I looked at
Uh-huh.
it, and I was like, it was either Mark or Sarah. And I looked at it,
Why
and I was like, I'm not gonna pick this
are
up. And I
you
was like,
calling me?
well, no, I looked at the clock. I said, what time is it? Oh, 1 o'clock. What is today? Oh, they're all partying. I'm not going to pick it up. And then I went back to sleep. but I knew
I,
exactly. I looked at who it was. I knew where they were, and I looked at the time, and I knew why they were calling. And I was like, I feel so loved. They called me. I'm going back to sleep.
that's sweet. Wise move. And it would have been like several hours later, even in this time zone. So
Well, I know that's why I figured out. I was like, oh my god, these guys are still up, because it would have been probably like around 3 o'clock for you guys. That's why I
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
knew that they were probably drunk, and now they're calling me, and there's be lots of like screaming and noise in the background. I was like, I can't go take this and say, what? Hello? What? Because my wife was sleeping, and even if I had gone somewhere else.
I'm sure I was definitely asleep by
Oh,
then
really?
for sure. Yeah. I didn't get to that's the at least for me that was a little bit of a bummer that I didn't get to really socialize much.
Yeah.
Um of course, because like we had to get home and get Josie to bed and I was exhausted. And so like kind of that part where you let loose at the end, like I never really got to do that, but I heard it
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah. I heard it was fun too. I told them, I said, you guys partied so hard, we had to shut the whole world down.
That's right. That's right.
It's like they couldn't handle it. The world couldn't handle it. Had to shut you guys down. So, but yeah, it's so crazy because that was like, yeah, because because I remember going and I was with Mark because my conference is in Baltimore, DC area. And
Oh,
so we got together in February. Like I just visited my friend in Vegas. When I went there, it was kind of like, because the first case, I think one of the first cases in the US was actually in the Seattle area. And so then I was like, and
oh,
then I went to Vegas. I was like, there's a lot of people here. It's like, should I really be here? It's like, I don't know. Visited my friend there, came back home, and then went to DC. And then I heard that DC was the other port of entry that they had closed down recently, or they're being more stringent. And I was like, I just came from the one. Now I'm going to the other, and I'm going to this conference.
am I rolling too many dice here?
Yeah, I was like, should I be concerned? But yeah, so Mark and I had actually, yes, set up, we had put together all these grand plans of things that we were going to do that year in regards to some other stuff that isn't going to happen now because I can't get away with these two kids and put the time in. But anyways, um, yeah, so it was just a crazy time and then going back home, and then it would have been Herbie, and then my March convention got canceled. But I was like, where am I going with
Uh-huh.
this? But I was like, oh yeah, because I think it was like February, still people were kind of like, well, we don't really know, right? But by March, beginning of March, and by mid-March, everything was done, right? I mean, everything was pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah, yeah. So, anyways, back to fun things to talk about. I want one of the biggest questions, and this is the biggest question I had, because as I'm watching it, I'm already thinking about like, okay, so when I interview Jennifer, like, what do I want to ask her? And I actually wish I would have like taken notes, but instead I just sat down, watched it, and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's so funny. So I actually, yeah, I flew home from Baltimore from my work conference I go to every year that night, and everyone was already asleep. So I went and unpacked and took a shower and stuff like that. And then immediately the next thing I did was go and order Herbie, Finding Herbie documentary
Oh,
on,
you're
on the
so
TV
sweet.
because it came out on Wednesday when I was working, and I was like, well, I can't watch it on my work computer, and I don't want to watch it on my phone. So as soon as I get home, I'm going to do that. So immediately after I
Oh,
got done taking care of what I need to get done, immediately went and bought it and watched it. So that's why another reason why I wasn't like gonna like start studying and taking notes on it, because I just want to sit there and then experience it. But one of the things in my mind that I kind of decided to kind of keep as a note that I really wanted to ask you was,
mhm.
now looking back at it, did you regret not playing Itsuka?
Oh, see that I don't regret it because I know that I wouldn't have done a good job.
Mm,
Um, but it is one of my favorite songs ever.
mm-hmm.
And I do hope someday might or would be able to, revisit that. But yeah, it's something you can't do halfway. You have to be full on invested. It's
Yeah,
not an easy piece to kind of jump in and kind of, sometimes pieces are looser, but
yeah,
that one's so specific and so beautiful. And
yeah,
I just loved it, and everyone did such a great job. So I I'm glad I didn't I'm glad I didn't do it because I knew I wouldn't, I couldn't
mm-hmm.
prepare enough to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah,
But
totally
yeah,
get
that
it.
was a bummer because I love it. I love that piece. I love that piece so much.
Yeah, it was so funny. The other things that I was kind of made me laugh or think about, because you know I want to say that we're kind of in that same boat of like, it's like, we're leaders of groups, and we're kind of like thinking about like, well, what can we do that would be cool to do this or that. And so there's the scene where you, Megan, and Tiffany are all sitting eating hot pot in the kitchen and talking about like, okay,
Uh-huh.
well, here's what I think this is what we're gonna do, and here's when we might be able to do it. It's like, oh, okay, and just kind of having that moment. It's like, oh man, how many times have I sat around kind of like sitting with different Taiko friends and stuff like that? It's like, you know
Yes.
what, we should do blank 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 blank, or we should do
Yeah.
this.
You're like, yeah.
What if we
let's
ever
let,
did this?
let's make that happen. Exactly. That's where all the good things happen. It's not in the workshops, it's in the drinks and the food and the time spent,
Yeah. Except for I'd say for 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 times, all the stuff that we talk about maybe doesn't always necessarily happen, but these yours actually did happen. So
Yeah.
that's the difference maybe between you and me and our conversations and yours.
No, you've done a lot. Are you kidding? These podcasts are not easy.
Yeah. Um, but that was a fun moment for me, coming from something I could relate to, and I guess from a personal standpoint, kind of watching it, it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's like I do that, you know.
Right? That's the
Yeah,
fun part. Yeah.
yeah. I think that when I went back to re-listen to your podcast that we did, you were talking about kind of the style that they were going to shoot this in, and it was not really kind of
Mhm.
like the documentary style where you have something and then you cut away to a cutaway where someone's talking about something. It's more kind of like the as it happens in real life,
Yeah.
and see how the story kind of emerges. And I thought that you were saying that that's actually the hardest kind, and sometimes you're kind of rolling the dice with it to see kind of, well, what is the story and how do we kind of craft that in. But I thought it was great. I really
Oh,
enjoyed the way that kind of, comparing that, like if it'd been, I'm sure it still would have been good if it would have been the other way, but I feel like that it just seemed like so much more personal,
mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
there's an intimacy there that's really lovely. And, also there's a thing of, for me, like all of the amazing artists in the film, we could have, turned it into a series and had a, more
Oh yeah.
focus on each person, which would have been so cool. But because I felt so many of their stories were missing from the overall, Taiko history and the narratives. The
Oh.
last thing I wanted to do was be the one to come in and say, all right, let's set up this shot and it should be this. And why don't you come over?
Oh.
I wanted their voices just to emerge as is and not to be because this is the way I think it should be,
Mm,
for it to come out organically.
mm-hmm,
Because that just made sense to me, like I didn't want to co-opt or try to like shape their narrative in any way.
mm.
I mean, you do, of course, through the editing process,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like there wasn't a scene that was set up to be filmed ever.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They were just there while we were doing our stuff.
Mm. Like do you want to learn Itsuka? No. Are you sure you're not good at it? I don't know. I just want this to be
Yeah,
over.
yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh God, it's like, man, I've been there too. It's like, oh, I gotta take this nap real quick.
I
I
know.
know that they're rehearsing and this and that going over here. I gotta peace out for a second. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like I just wanted this to be over. Megan was like, no, you don't. It's like, like, don't say that. It's like, oh gosh, oh man, been there too on that. So many things just touch me on that personal level
Oh,
too.
good.
Yeah.
Yay. That's great to hear.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of sparked a conversation between Garrett, my brother, and I, and it also kind of because I just had this conversation with Mark right before I had watched it. But it was, I think, sometimes, I don't want to say like, so me and my friends, for lack of better words, I guess, it's easy for me and us to take for granted, I guess, the people that we actually know and have access to and get to work with. Um, because when we broke it down, I was looking at the poster and looking at the people in the film, and I was like, okay, well, there's 18 people here, and 11 of those like I know or I've like met, right?
Mhm.
And 7 of them have been on my podcast where I actually like sat down and interviewed them because I either know them really well or I met them and I got to interview these people, and I was like, and these are someone like, these are phenomenal players, performers, artists, that are being represented here, and it's just like, man, it's like, you know you sometimes you just stop and think it's like how special that actually is. But I think that it's easy for us to take for granted that, like, oh yeah, I know so and so, that's my friend. Right.
Well, and what I found too is like, you know, I think that when taiko players and performers in general, when they get on stage, they're otherworldly. They're like
Mm,
magical and superhuman, right?
hmm.
And then when they're off stage, you see them sick and tired and exhausted and cranky and hungry and funny and all of the things that human beings are, you
Yeah.
know. But I think too, like when I see somebody being amazing on stage, I think, oh, you must have always been amazing in your life.
Mm,
People must have always recognized it because it's so obvious that you were born to do this, you
mm,
know?
hmm.
And then when you hear the story of like the Tiffany's or the Chico's, of how many barriers they had to get to that moment
Yeah.
and how hard that road was and how nothing was taken for granted and how everything was hard fought and hard won, then it just makes you appreciate it even more, as opposed to sort of that like, oh, of course they're wonderful and amazing and everyone would have always known this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That yeah, it's just by pure grit, determination, and tenacity that they're there, you
Yeah.
know. um so it was sort of eye-opening for me a little bit, like the more I learned about people and the more you see like their insecurities and the things they're struggling with, and
Mm,
it's we're all human and it's all a big struggle and mess, but in that struggle is where all the gooey good stuff is too, like
hmm.
that's where all the good stuff happens. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I think anyone who is trying to carve out an artist's path in this world is amazing.
Mm,
Like if you manage to be in a taiko group and run and keep a taiko group going and afloat and viable in this landscape, that's amazing. It is not easy. um, and so just getting that level of that many experiences, that much talent, that much um, capacity in the room was so stunning.
mm.
I did have to like just turn this thing off in my brain where I'm like, all right, we're just all working here, rolling up our sleeves, getting the work done. Or I just would have stood there sort of like starry eyed the whole time, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could see that. Yeah, it's just one of those things that hit, and Garrett pointed out, so the Mizue Yamada,
Yeah.
yeah, she kind of said in one of the in one of the you guys were kind of sitting and looking like in the living room kind of talking, and she said like she said like these are kind of like my taiko idols, and like I look at like Chieko-san, and for me to be able to perform with her, it's like she's my taiko goddess. And it's
Mhm.
like you just think about even people that we probably look at, and I didn't never really know too much about her, and so she was kind of one of my favorite people that I didn't know, that the
Mhm.
new people that was like, oh man, it's like I want to go see her play in different things. It's like where are more videos of her group and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so but for her to kind of say that too, where and then thinking about the conversation that I just had with Mark 2 days before when I saw him, and he had Chieko out in the DC area for like intensives and kind of
Mhm.
workshops, and he was staying at their house, and she was giving Kristen a private lesson of Hana Hachijo. So it's but for us it's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, Chieko, it's like, yeah, she was in my basement the other day giving us a workshop and she was talking about this. It's kind of like, and we're like, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, and that's like sounding normal to us, but some other people or other people in the audience, they're just kind of like what, like wow, it's like I will never even get to meet that person, and we're just like, oh yeah, she's at my house, we're doing a little, she's training, do some training in our basement. It's like, I've been in your basement, yeah,
Well, everyone in the taiko community is so accessible and so generous. Like it's a very
yes,
generous community of people wanting to share their art and teach and lift other people up. It's really cool that way.
yeah. So just kind of you know thinking about some other things that were kind of in the documentary. It was wild when kind of that period, about I think it was maybe a week or so, that looked like everyone got sick, and so then
Mhm.
it was like, well, hey, do we all have the flu or do we all have COVID? One person did not have COVID, so I think we just all have the flu. But I mean, was that like, was that scary, or kind of what was the atmosphere like kind of during that
Well,
time frame?
the thing is during that whole time, as all those newscast things were happening, and everyone was sort of noticing this coming, we were so busy from like,
Oh,
from 7 a.m. in the morning to 2 a.m. at night. Like, I didn't have time to listen to the radio or watch TV or do anything besides just taiko, 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 eat, sleep, taiko, taiko, taiko. And so
oh,
when we started getting sick, I just assumed it was the flu. Honestly, I just thought like, oh, this is the worst. Everyone's getting sick. What are we gonna do? But it never like hit me like this could be a bigger problem thing.
yeah.
I think, and the other thing too, and I do remember thinking like in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, should we be worried? Like maybe this is that thing they're talking about. And I actually took several people to urgent care, which
Oh,
ended up like being part of my job too. And you know, they didn't seem worried at all. Um,
well, yeah.
so it hadn't
It
reached the
had,
level of
yeah,
concern for health professionals. And I was thinking, well, if you're not worried about it, and like, is there a test? And they're like, no, so there was no tests.
yeah.
Um, and they were just like, oh, this is a lot of people like that strain of the flu was going around. So it wasn't uncommon.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there's no way of really knowing who got what when, if they got them both, but whatever it was nasty.
Oh,
So I just feel like some people probably did have COVID, some people probably had the flu, and some people probably had both. Like it was rough. But yeah, I was like, well, if the clinic's not scared about it, I guess I shouldn't worry about it.
yeah. Little did we know.
Yeah, exactly. Come back to rehearsal as soon as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's so wild. What what do you think your favorite part of talking about kind of the concert? Kind of
Mm.
what was I think one of maybe, and they could be the same, but kind of what was like one of the maybe your favorite parts, and what might have been a spot where and it maybe even it might not even be when it was happening, but maybe when you went back and watched the footage, kind of what was that kind of moment that you know that felt, I guess, the most special to you?
A couple, well, it's hard to say all of it, but a few things were special. Like one is the first moment where Anna Sato opens her mouth and sings, and just
Mm,
like that's stunning. It was in rehearsal too. Everybody just stopped and was like frozen in awe.
mm,
For me, the first big opening number of the concert was the one that I had sort of the most vision slash shaping of. And so that was really exciting to pull that off, to get everybody on stage, to have all these different things going on, and to try to piece it all together to make it work. So that was huge. I kind of felt like if we can do that, then we can do anything.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was a big moment for me. There was a moment where we ended Kokoro Zashi, and like honestly, sometimes when you're on stage, you're fully on stage and you're like the audience is there, but you're not like as in tuned. But in that moment, like the audience response, like for like a half a second, I felt like a rock star because it was just so huge,
Oh yeah.
and so immediate of a response. I was just like blink, 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 like wow, that was cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, and then yeah, I mean, just so many things. Oh my gosh. But in the film, there what surprised me is that, it's it's weird watching a film, number one, that you're in, because that's
Mm,
just uncomfortable because nobody likes to hear themselves speak or watch. I don't anyways. So there's that weird sort of self-conscious feeling, and there's also the alternate feeling of like I have a very lived experience of what this is, and
oh
what's on
yeah.
a film is a different perspective than like what's in my brain, right? You
Oh.
kind of get this 360 view as opposed to your like 5-degree view of like what happened.
Oh yeah.
So I saw things like that I didn't know happened,
Yeah,
or
that
moments
sounds,
that I
yeah, that's
didn't
the, yeah.
remember, and things like that. So
Uh-huh.
that was cool. And then, but also, there's no way it can show the depth of the experience that you experience. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
so it's both and. But the moment that I loved is there's this, and it's partly because I was having a little like mom guilt, right? Because here's
Mm.
I'm throwing all my energy into this, and like Josie is just being a real trooper and getting dragged to all these rehearsals and all of these events and all these things, but like really putting that on the back burner and focusing on all on everything else. But then there was this moment in the film where we're holding hands and skipping backstage together,
Oh
like
yeah.
the whole
Uh-huh.
concert was over. And I totally forgot about that. But
Oh
then
really?
it was up in the film and I was like, oh, like it just made me feel so much better. Like it was a
Uh-huh.
very kind of healing moment for me to be able to see that. So that was lovely. Um, yeah, I thought the film was really healing because I could have a little more space and distance and see like what a
Mhm.
so many beautiful things happened,
Yeah.
and not just sort of my own inventory of what went well and what didn't, and
Oh yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like I could go on and on, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think I mean, if you could go back, I don't want to say if you can go back and like change something,
Hmm.
but if you can go back and maybe, yeah, maybe change something or add something, or it's like, oh, I wish we could have done XYZ or whatever. Do you have any of those that said, oh man, it would have
Oh,
been cool if we
there's
would have
a
been able to?
million things I would have
Oh,
done differently, right? When
okay,
you have a
okay.
project that big, like you are making, there are gaps everywhere, and
Okay.
people are jumping in, filling the gaps, and doing all of the things. I would have, like, the main thing is I really underestimated the amount of staff we needed to support everything.
Oh, okay.
The folks who were on staff were so, like, conferences, this happens to any big event.
Yeah.
um, they were so stretched thin and so overworked that
Mm,
like I think it pushed every single person to the edge of what they were capable of and past it. So in that way, like we needed twice the staff just to support the activities and the artists and all the things that were happening.
I see.
Um, so that alone would have made a big difference. Certainly couldn't have anticipated the being sick part.
Yeah. I mean,
you
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um I think there were some things I was over ambitious of, like, well, everyone's here, so let's slam in like a mini conference. you
Oh,
know like maybe that was a little too much, or
yeah.
maybe like we should have like forced a day off, like, or in the
Uh,
original plan there are moments and times of leisure and rest. But then as things happened, as people got sick or people couldn't make a rehearsal and you had to do catch up and all these things and everything shuffled, and then all of that like got just
mm,
squeezed.
yeah,
So but that's the nature of those things. I mean, there is sort of a glorious chaos in it, which
yeah.
I think I'm more comfortable in, and I think
Mm.
was probably terrifying for the Japanese artists. We're
Oh,
used to very detailed, scheduled, I know what to expect, and we were like changing things on the fly from the first day. It was like the
oh,
whole, like I spent weeks and weeks like parsing out a very detailed schedule of 3 different rehearsal spaces, where all the drums which went, which songs were going where, who was driving people. Like I had this whole map, and after the first day we had to throw it out the window because so many things changed.
oh, I see.
So yeah, so it was kind of it was a lot of I wish I could have minimized that level of uncertainty to support everybody to do their art a little better, so they weren't quite worried about like what's happening.
Oh, I see.
So that would have been nice. Yeah, I just yeah, so many things I would have done a little differently.
Mhm. One
But
of the things.
I
Oh,
loved it. I mean, I loved the end
oh,
result.
yeah.
Like I wouldn't change a thing of the end result,
Right. Yeah. 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 One of the things that I actually liked about, well, among the many things I'm saying, I like this, and one of the things I liked, one of the things I liked, right? But one of the things that I felt, and that you kind of actually alluded to a little bit about, kind of, with your daughter, but I liked how the directors actually kind of took like to me it seemed like they kind of took like a little bit of like a family aspect, and they really kind of wove that into the story between you, your daughter, and then Megan also.
Mhm.
And I felt for me that it felt so much more like personal. And it wasn't just about kind of like just the kind of what's happening with artists and what's happening kind of logistically what's happening, but it's like, what does this mean for, this family that is actually, in one way or other all kind of participate and going through it together,
Mhm.
to put on this thing that's bigger than all of us, right? um and even, for your daughter, it's like, oh, time to practice the violin, and then there's another scene, oh, more violin practicing time. It's like, oh, okay.
We're
um
trying to be good parents.
yeah, but it actually, as I started kind of watching that, I was wondering, what's the story, like what's the origin story of you and Megan? Because I actually don't know kind of how you guys met and how
Yeah.
that all kind of came to be. So if you don't mind sharing that story, I'd be kind of interested in hearing a little bit about
Sure.
that.
Well, we knew each other through the taiko community, because I had performed a few times with Tiffany's Joe Daiko group, which
Oh,
Megan
okay.
was in as well.
Hmm.
And so, but never really spent that much time, like knew each other, but didn't like, um, never really spent any time together besides like a rehearsal and a performance here or there.
Sure.
Um, and where we connected actually was, at the I think it was the last Taiko conference that was held in LA in, would it
Oh,
be,
09 probably.
yeah.
Yeah, it should be 09. Yeah.
Yeah. So that Taiko conference, I almost wasn't going to go because of, other things that I had going on. And Megan was living in Japan and was there representing Shirara.
Yeah.
Um, and so we, a bunch of us, went out for, a bunch of the queer, taiko players went out and went to the clubs one night.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so then we actually got to hang out and spend time together and have drinks together. And then, sort of like, kind of had sort of a first date at the Taiko conference.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Okay.
oh, after the concert, you want to hang out? And like, oh, sure, sure. Um, and then, then they flew back to Japan. I was like, oh, that was nice.
That was
But then they flew back, for a second date, where we're like, well, that was really fun and we have a great connection. And we were both surprised, at least I was, by this. And Megan was like, all right, let's give this a chance. So Megan flew back from Japan to spend a long weekend with me for a second date.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we started dating, long distance.
Uh-huh.
And then, Shirara was coming through, the US for a tour, which
Yeah.
had been planned long time ago. And one of the stops was in St. Paul.
Okay. Okay.
And so then they finished their tour, that following April, I think. And then that's Megan decided to stay here and not go back to Japan and move to Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And, also during this period of, dating long distance, I was also at the time trying to get pregnant,
Mm.
um, and was planning to be a single mom, honestly. And
Oh,
then
okay.
we're like, well, the time is right. And so we kind of became an instant family right away. It was very epic and
Ah,
whirlwindy. So yeah, so Megan moved back from Japan and settled here in the Twin Cities, um, and we started our family together.
okay. Yeah, and it's interesting because I had not. I'm trying to remember if I kind of known the story about that, but in the documentary, she had kind of mentioned that she said when she moved back to the US that she's like, I'm not gonna play taiko anymore. I'm kind of done. I'm just gonna kind of worry,
Yeah.
focus on kind of starting a family and just kind of move on. But then eventually, she kind of well, obviously came back to kind of do taiko.
Yeah, it
um
sort of happened gradually because when Megan moved back, they were just really burned out,
mm,
like kind of crispy and needed time to recover. And we
Hmm.
were, new parents and all that was happening. And then Megan became a nurse, went back to school, became a nurse.
Yep. Okay.
And then occasionally would do like a guest artist performance with us when we had our concert. It'd be like, oh, can you come play a song or can you know? But then after her beat, that was when Megan really was like, no, I really want to do this again. I'm ready. And
Oh,
so
okay.
then after that, and after the what during the pandemic and all things went crazy, especially with health professionals, then
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and the combination of Herbie made a really compelling argument to go back to Taiko. And so
Uh-huh.
now Megan's full time Taiko again, which
I
is
didn't
awesome.
realize I didn't realize that was the catalyst was
Yeah, it was part of it. Yeah.
okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, well that's cool then. Well thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I also saw and I don't know if it was on your Facebook, but a post about being a hockey mom now.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was you, right? Yeah.
That was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Minnesota is very hockey land.
Yes.
Minnesota, Canada.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Josie was in a girls' league and loved it, so that was fun.
Yeah. I know it was kind of funny because it's like you posted the picture and I just watched the documentary and it was like, wait a minute, is that the same person? It's like, oh, that was 4 years ago. I'm like, it's like
Yeah,
she's old.
she's
It's like,
like
oh,
a
she's
teen
older.
now.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Totally like twice as tall, totally different human.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So do you guys go out and catch any of the games for the Wild or
We haven't yet.
oh yeah.
No, we haven't hit that next level.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, that's one of the when there's different hockey people in the taiko community, it's like that. I always like to kind of ask questions because I got my Seattle Kraken hat on
Yeah, yeah,
today.
yeah.
So I don't think we're gonna make the playoffs this year after
Oh,
last night. It's quite
sorry.
sad and dejected, but I mean we're not mathematically out, but it's not this. I mean, I'm realistic. It's probably not gonna happen this year. So
Gotcha.
yeah. Well, you guys have got a pretty good team out there. They're also kind of having a weird year. So when you get to that level and you're able to kind of go and
Yeah,
get
then we'll talk
that,
shop.
yeah. So please enjoy. So, um, is your daughter interested at all in taiko, or does has she done
Recently
anything?
is getting more interested in taiko, so Megan's starting a youth performance group,
Oh,
and then
okay,
that's kind of got Josie interested. So
okay.
um yeah, so they'll be performing for the first time at our concert, our main concert coming up in May here.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's exciting. Yeah.
Okay.
She's still keeping up with the violin. There's a violin back here. She's still crushing the violin.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's always kind of the interesting thing too about like kind of those that second generation or say potential second generation taiko players is now that I've got the kids, my brother's got the kids, and some of our ex members have kids, and we always joke about the kids group that we're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're like,
start.
shut
Or
up, I don't want to do that.
yeah, I mean they're too young at this point. Just like, but I mean, or maybe not. I've seen some
You
videos.
never
It's like
know.
small
Like
kids. Yeah.
I think it's in their DNA and they're just kind of like references because when you surround, that environment of music, I think like
Hmm.
gets soaked up one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Riker, I brought him to a few performances, and
Does he fall asleep?
no. But and here's why though, because like a couple of them, I think they were outdoor ones, and
Mhm.
so it was and I was in the audience. I wasn't playing because I'd been on kind of paternity leave, so to speak, with the younger one, right? But so as I brought him to these deals in the summertime, and so it was like you watch the first song, oh yay, this is interesting. Then it was like there's a plane and look at
And
that
a
truck that just
squirrel.
drove by, and I was like, okay, you're done. It was kind of like, okay, well, that lasted one and a half
Yeah.
songs, and now it's the like, I want to play with this grass. It's like, okay, yeah. Or recently we had like a Chinese New Year event that we played, and so him and his cousin were sitting there, and is sitting there kind of in the front, but then kind of looked around at the different what do you want to call it, like booths and stuff like that. So I'm sitting there, and I actually played in this show, so I'm playing and I'm kind of looking at the audience, and my niece is like very intently, like seriously, kind of just like watching. And Riker's got this like toy dragon thing, and he's like, do 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 dragon, do 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 do, playing with the dragon, not even paying attention to the show, just playing with like the dragon. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe not, you know.
That's great.
But on the other hand, I did take him to a practice last summer, and he was a little bit anxious at first, and it was kind of like a class that we were kind of running for some collegiate people that were in the area for the summer. And so he just kind of just want to sit there and watch for a bit. Then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go grab a She-Man on like a sitting stand, let him just kind of
Oh yeah, yeah.
play a little bit. Or I had the back end of the bocce and stuff like that, and he had the front, and he was moving, and I was kind of using it to kind of keep the bass beat. And so then he kind of, he liked that. And then he said, I want to go and play the bigger one. So it's just a Chudaiko. And so I said, okay, here, just use these same smaller sticks. So he went up there, and then we didn't even have to tell him, what to do or whatever. He just got in the stance from watching the other people and whatnot. And he just got in there, and then he was kind of looking, and then he just kind of started playing. So, okay, ready, go. And then he was just playing bass beat while they were doing whatever their drill was. And it was just like, oh my God, like learned so quick, just picked it up, just got the stance, and then we were all just like behind going like,
Okay,
oh my God, look at that.
Is someone filming this?
Yeah. So I got a picture of it.
Oh, good.
So it's my pride and joy moment.
Awesome.
For now at least. But I don't know. I think because he's only seen me play once, but usually it's like my brother is on stage. And so when I had a YouTube video up of Taiko or something like that, he said, Uncle Garrett. I was like, no, Uncle Garrett's not in this video, but yes, that's Taiko. And then he got occupied with something else and then went the other direction. So, but he knew that's the thing that Uncle Garrett does, not necessarily Dad, but but I don't know. Like I said, maybe when I start actually playing more a little bit, then he sees that he'll kind of recognize that. But I don't know. We'll see. Kind of just that's the thing, and just continued exposure. And if they like it and want to try it, then maybe we'll kind of see where it goes.
I'll occasionally bribe Josie. I'll be like, $20 if you come play with me on this gig.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, all you have to do is play Matsuri. She's like, okay.
Well, hey, I mean, at least she knows it.
Yeah.
That she could do it for the $20.
Yeah, right. Totally. She totally knows it.
I was talking about kids. So Shinobu Homa, from Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and his daughter Kayo, who's not playing now, but she used to play. And so we were all kind of sitting there one time at NATC, and we're like, hey, Shinobu, it's like, how did you get Kayo to start playing as a kid? And he's like, well, the secret is you have to have them want to do it. They have to come and ask you to do it. And Kayo said, that's not how I remember starting to first play. He's like, no, that's the best way to, that's the way I did it. And she's like, Dad, that's not the way I remember it. And so we're all sitting there cracking up laughing. And he's like, nope, that's the way. She's like, yeah, I don't think so.
That's awesome. Calling it. Yeah, I love it.
So funny. But anyways, well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat about obviously Finding Herbie the documentary, Herbie the concert, and then other random stuff that I just decided to kind of throw in there, talking about parenting and kids and COVID.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the director of Finding Herbie, when we met for coffee, we were talking about like how hard it is to be moms and artists and juggling all the things. And I think I think people can relate to that regardless. The juggling of all the things is really hard,
Yeah. So I would recommend that if people haven't seen the documentary, that you definitely go see it. I think there's something in there for everybody, and for a lot of, especially us in the Taiko community, who are basically the people that are going to be watching this, right? I mean, I think that you can find yourself or find something that you could relate to, or your group, something that your group has gone through that you can relate to, or be inspired by kind of what you see on stage, from a performance standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, from a standpoint of kind of like dreaming something that you want to do, and then kind of making it happen. All those different things are all kind of wrapped up in this documentary. And like I said, I just identified with it in so many different ways, kind of seeing that, like, yeah, it's like I know this, not all of it, but I know this experience. It's like I've been there, I've kind of been through that. It's like I know how they're probably feeling right now, as they go through these steps of whatever it is, and at that point of the process. And I think that even though that it wasn't a documentary, so to speak, where we're cutting away, we're getting kind of those one-on-one stories. I think that when there was a little bit of that, because I know that you said in the previous interview that because they were already doing an interview series with Chieko in Japan, that it was kind of like piggybacking off that, and we got to kind of hear her story through kind of more of like an interview type feature. So when we were able to see that, and with Kaoli a little bit too, we got to see a little bit about her kind of backstory. And so I think that was also well done, and I learned so much about those artists. One that I have met and know, one that I don't know, but I will be meeting this summer. Another little plug. Yeah. Oh, matter of fact, are you going to be able to make it out for NATCR?
No, so I will be at the Toronto Taiko Festival. That's, I think, happening at the same time.
Okay.
But there is an opportunity where Kaoli-san's going to come through the Midwest, and so I'll see
nice.
her then.
Okay, good. Yeah, she's doing a like before the conference itself, like an intensive for I think, I don't know, it's a 2-day, 3-day intensive, but whatever it is, I heard it sold out like really fast.
Oh, the
So
Seattle one,
for the
yeah,
Seattle
that's
one, yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
So it's going to be amazing that a lot of people are going to be able to take advantage of her workshop
Yeah,
intensive that's happening out here. So I'm not taking that, but I'm sure at some point there's a way that I can meet her in person, since I've been seeing her,
you'll love her.
on all over the place. And so yeah, I really look forward to that. So but anyways, before we go, can you again just kind of plug how
Oh,
people can see the
yeah,
documentary, how people can watch the concert?
sure.
We can't say it enough. So
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
So if you want to watch just the concert, go to Vimeo on demand, and you can get the link. If you can't find it, you can get the link from our website, findingherbeat.com. And if you want to rent the film, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Google Play, or you can go to Tubi. And please rate and review whatever platform you end on. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
awesome. Well, it's been good chatting with you, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have you on the show another time where you can announce your next giant dream of a project. That
Well, thank you so much. It's always great chatting with you.
all right. Well, thanks again.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.